Joined the Marines at 17. I have been a Marine at this point, 2004, my entire adult life. I've been a Marine. I got in a program where I got to go to school, I got a degree, I became an officer, I was excelling through the ranks, and when we went to invade Iraq, I was snatched up by Central Command, who was in charge of that entire region, all the military actions in that region, to be a spokesperson for the general, whose name was General Tommy Franks. And so, during the invasion, I would be the guy that would go on TV and try to explain what the military was doing and why we were doing it. And so I find myself in Doha. We're going to invade Iraq, and I would go out and give interviews to Fox News, to the Today Show, to CBS. They all had reporters there at Central Command at this media center. Well, I would also give interviews to Al Jazeera. And I ended up giving a lot of interviews to Al Jazeera, this little Arabic 24/7 channel. The difference between them and, say, Fox is rather than doing it by satellite, I would actually go across town into their studios, because while Central Command was located in Doha, Qatar, so is Al Jazeera. It's headquartered in Doha, Qatar. So I was spending a lot of time in their studios and getting to know what they were. And turned out, more importantly, getting to know what they weren't. Because about this same time, Rumsfeld and people like Rumsfeld started to say in America that Al Jazeera was showing beheadings over and over again. That they're the mouthpiece of Al-Qaeda. Things like this. And here I am, like in their network, I can see their code of ethics on the wall. I'm eating lunch with their producers. I'm getting to know their reporters and anchors fairly well. Everything he was saying just wasn't true. Like they'd never shown a beheading in the history of the network. Completely false. And yet it was repeated in American media for years. International media printed that story and later apologized for it. They put out a correction. American media never did. And if you listen to what bin Laden was saying, he was calling for attacks against Al Jazeera. So the first thing I started to learn is what it wasn't. It wasn't what this administration was saying it was. And then I started to learn what it was. And what it was incredibly influential. Incredibly. I can't overestimate how influential it was at the time, because this was before all the other news channels that have come after it, modeling themselves after Al Jazeera. At the time, it was the only free press in the Middle East, and it came out by satellite, so anyone with a satellite dish from Morocco to Baghdad could get it. Governments couldn't stop it from coming in at the border because it wasn't delivered by cable. It was free-to-air satellite. So everyone in the region was watching it. Everywhere I traveled, it was on in the barbershops. It was on in the restaurants. It was the engine driving the debate at the time. And I started to see it for its importance to the whole region. And I made the argument to Central Command that, hey, what's happening? There's a battle happening on Al Jazeera. A battle of ideas. The U.S. is not engaged in it. I'm going on, but I'm a junior officer. The Middle East isn't really even my expertise. There should be a lot more attention. Like a lot of senior officials should be going on. As a matter of fact, when the U.S. finally gets to Baghdad, now certain reporters should probably be with General Franks, because this is the regional world. And the battle that's happening on Al Jazeera could be more important than the battle that's happening in Iraq. Because the entire region, what they know about Iraq was mostly coming from Al Jazeera and through Al Jazeera. So you're talking about affecting a region or affecting one country. I really think we should be paying attention to what's happening here. I was shot down in a rather graphic way. You have to excuse my language, but this is the way the story happened. General Franks was going to give his first big press conference. All the media were going to be there, and I knew the Al Jazeera reporter, Omar El-Asawi, very intelligent guy, Western educated, sharp, and he was going to be sitting, actually right here, in the front row, second seat over. And so I told General Franks, after you give your opening comments at the lectern, you're going to open up the questions, how about giving the first question to Al Jazeera as a sign of respect to this part of the world that we're in? And he said, yeah, sure, Russian, I'll do that, right after I rip off his head and shut down his throat. I clearly was not going to get an Al Jazeera reporter on the plane with General Franks when the U.S. went into Baghdad. This was the attitude that the U.S. administration had toward the network. So, it was frustrating, but during that time, a professor from the American University of Cairo had asked permission to come and interview me for an academic journal that he had. And normally we wouldn't do these things, but he happened to have been the former bureau chief for NBC in the region. And my boss kind of knew people he knew. So he's like, yeah, sure, why don't you, talk to him? And so he comes in and he says, I'm bringing a couple of grad students with me. One of them's doing a video project on Al Jazeera. And he's got a partner who's a documentary filmmaker who's kind of helping him do this project. And it's like, okay, fine. So they came, they were in our space for like a couple of days maybe. They interviewed me, they filmed the professor interviewing me, and we chatted a bit. I thought nothing of this student project at the University of Cairo, the American University of Cairo. So turns out that little project became this film that went and swept Sundance and then got released all over the world. People started recognizing me from the movie before I ever saw the movie, which was just really disconcerting and odd. When all the media in America, it came out right at the same time as Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11, and a lot of the reviews in the paper said, look, you could go see the Michael Moore film, but here's the smarter film about Iraq control room. So it really had a lot of people go see it. And then the media wanted to talk to me about Al Jazeera because Abu Ghraib broke right when the movie came out. And Al Jazeera was kind of a part of the Abu Ghraib story because it showed those photos. So as all the media called the Pentagon to say, hey, we want to interview this Marine, the Pentagon said no comment. So I was already frustrated with what seemed to be the way Americans didn't understand what Al Jazeera was, because of what they were hearing from the administration. But who's going to listen to me, kind of a junior officer? Well, out of the blue, a year later, a lot of people would listen to me, but not as a Marine. And so at that point, I've been a Marine for 14 years, and I had the decision of I can stay in and finish this. I only have 6 years to go and I get retirement. Retirement in the Marines means, well, the military means that you get like health care for you and your family for the rest of your life. You get like half your pay for the rest of your life, access to military bases for the rest of your life. But if you leave a day before 20, you get nothing. It's not like the civilian world where you leave with 60% of your retirement that you've been working toward. You leave with nothing. And so I had this decision facing me: do I keep quiet